Kicking off another brand new broadcast day here at the Steve Gruber Show. Glad to have you here as we kick off another brand new week as well. It's going to be a huge week, all right? Huge week right here. Who do you want to share a foxhole with? Who do you want there in your foxhole? That's the question here today. This is Foxhole of Freedom here on the Steve Gruber Show. Glad to have you. A lot to talk about today, so let's get right to it. Three things at the top of the leaderboard. Number one, an off-duty ICE officer shot in the face by a violent illegal alien that should have been removed by the Biden administration, but instead released into the country. Number two, President Trump dropped a massive $10 billion lawsuit on the Wall Street Journal after it published an article claiming they had a birthday note. They claimed Trump wrote it and sent it to Jeffrey Epstein. $10 billion lawsuit. Let the games begin. And number three, the crime of the century now playing out in front of our eyes. One political crisis after another, and all with one thing in common. They are manufactured by Democrats who are all trying to upend this nation in exchange for power, money, leverage. So, move over Watergate. We've now got concrete evidence for the Russia collusion hoax that from here forward be always known as Obamagate, which blows Nixon's indiscretions out of the water, by the way. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has declassified over 100 pages of hard-hitting evidence, showing quite clearly now that President Obama undermined the will of the American people by manufacturing the Russia hoax before and well after the election of 2016. He attempted a coup. That's the bottom line. He attempted a coup of his successor, President Donald Trump, the 45th president of the United States, and it almost worked. We now know without a shadow of a doubt that the corruption ran all the way to the top, with Barack Obama himself as the criminal mastermind behind the plot to scandalize the Trump presidency from day one. The documents released show that both before and after the 2016 election, the intelligence community concluded that Russia did not have the capability to hack the election in favor of President Trump. But Obama kept that reporting out of publication. He hid that and instead ordered his subordinates to construct assessments, creating the opposite illusion. He buried the truth in an attempt to bury Donald Trump. And again, it almost worked. And as soon as the election was over, he laid the foundation for doubt in the American people's mind in their elections. He laid the foundation for the Russia election interference hoax. Listen to this.
Unless the American people genuinely think that the professionals in the CIA, the FBI, our entire intelligence infrastructure, many of whom, by the way, served in previous administrations and who are Republicans, are less trustworthy than the Russians, then people should pay attention to what our intelligence agencies say.
We should listen to what the intelligence agencies say. But he had manipulated that. That was just 8 days. 8 days after Barack Obama received the report that Russia didn't manipulate the outcome of the election. And in fact, didn't have the ability to do so. It was simply not possible. And Obama, he didn't care. He went to work crafting a narrative. Let's get into that report. Here is Director Tulsi Gabbard as she lays out one receipt after another, after another. Here she is.
In the months leading up to the 2016 election, the intelligence community assessed, and this is what the documents detail, the intelligence community assessed essentially Russia doesn't have the tools, the capability, or the intent to try to change the outcome of the U.S. presidential election. Donald Trump pulls off a historic victory against Hillary Clinton in November of 2016. Even in the days after that election, the intelligence community continued their consistent assessment that reflected the same thing in the months leading up to the election. All of a sudden, in the early days of December, there was a president's daily brief that was drafted. This is put together by the different elements of the intelligence community that reflected that same assessment. Russia did not try to hack the election, in essence. That PDB, that document, was pulled hours before it was supposed to be published for the president to see that following morning. That document was never published until we released it yesterday. 1 day later, President Obama calls a meeting of his National Security Council, his top officials, to be held on what they called a sensitive topic. And the results of that meeting, which we released yesterday, and these over 100 documents that talk about in detail how President Obama and his team, he directed a manufactured piece of intelligence that detailed not if, but how Russia tried to influence the outcome of the United States election that President Trump won in November of 2016.
Remarkable. Lays it all out. Gabbard compares the impact of this kind of subversion to that of the cooked-up reporting that suggested that weapons of mass destruction were lying in wait in the Middle East 20 years ago. Reporting that cost our nation precious treasure, years, and lives, she says this is of the same magnitude, one that resulted in a $40 million Mueller investigation that yielded zero. But I say this scandal, far bigger. President Obama was making media appearances in 2017 after President Trump had won the election, of course, to continue sowing distrust in the Trump presidency. He did it over and over again. Here's more.
Trump. President Putin was trying to elect Trump?
Well, I think the report is very clear. Number one, the Russians sought to interfere with the election process, that the cyber hacking that took place by the Russians was part of that campaign, and that they had a clear preference in terms of outcomes. What I've repeatedly said is that our intelligence communities spend a lot of time and effort gathering a lot of strands and a lot of data. There are times where they're very cautious and they say, we think this is what happened, but we're not certain.
Saying high confidence here.
This time, they've got high confidence, and having seen some of the underlying sources and information that they're basing this on, I stand fully behind the report.
What is that?
Complete lies, all of it. Because here's what the presidential daily brief said, the one that he had pulled, buried, the one that never saw the light of day until Tulsi Gabbard said, release that document. Here's what it said. We assessed that Russian and criminal actors did not impact recent elections. And again, quote, criminal activity failed to reach the scale and sophistication necessary to change election outcomes. The Russians didn't have the skill or the ability. They didn't do it. That was on December the 8th, 2016. The very next day, a day that will live in infamy, just like the day 2 days prior, December 9th, the White House ordered a gathering of top intelligence officials, James Clapper, John Brennan, Susan Rice, Andrew McCabe, the list goes on. And that's when the story changed. We're going to get that when we come back. The biggest scandal in American history unfolding before our eyes. Somebody needs to go to jail. Somebody needs to go to jail soon. I'll be right back. All right. December 9th, 2016. Barack Obama is in the room leading the meeting. James Clapper, John Brennan, Susan Rice, Andrew McCabe, and a host of other co-conspirators. That's when the story changes, because that's when the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, his assistant, sends out an email after that meeting tasking these leaders with the creation of an assessment. That's right, the creation of an assessment. Quote, for the president's request that would contradict the presidential brief. And here's James Comey, the head of the FBI, perpetuating that lie in early 2017. Listen to this.
There should be no fuzz on this whatsoever. The Russians interfered in our election during the 2016 cycle. They did it with purpose. They did it with sophistication. They did it with overwhelming technical efforts. And it was an active measures campaign driven from the top of that government. There is no fuzz on that. It is a high confidence judgment of the entire intelligence community, and the members of this committee have seen the intelligence. It's not a close call. that happened. That's about as unfake as you can possibly get and is very, very serious, which is why it's so refreshing to see a bipartisan focus on that, because this is about America, not about any particular party.
Well, there's no fuzz on that already. That's right. No fuzz. He's a criminal, and so they all are. So they all are. He claims hundreds, maybe thousands of entities were targeted by the Russians, but it's not true. The intelligence community said just the opposite. What I'm seeing, hundreds or maybe thousands of lies. And like I said, no fuzz on that. You see, the world's tallest Boy Scout right there was then and is today a scumbag. That was part and parcel to the Russia interference fraud. It was Comey's own FBI in 2016 that indicated low confidence. Low confidence in the idea that Russia was behind the DNC attack, something that was left out of the official reporting as well. And then it was December 2016, which the Obama administration intentionally leaked claims that Vladimir Putin personally oversaw attempts to overthrow the 2016 election. And of course, the media was more than happy to share these kinds of leaks for the next 4 years to undermine the duly elected president of these United States, Donald J. Trump, by comparing the Russia hoax to 9/11. Listen to this.
I mean, according to the Washington Post, the idea that the president doesn't even want to hear intelligence about Russia's meddling in the election is a stunning thing, and that briefers have to kind of figure out a workaround is really eye-opening.
It's unique, as far as I can tell, in all of American history. It's an alarming report, Anderson, partly because the Washington Post has interviewed more than 50 people, so it's built up a lot of background, and it's a more solidly built report. But what comes out of it is the president, because of his personal insecurities, not wanting to have his election diminished or discredited in some way. If he accepts the conclusion of his intelligence agencies that the Russians meddled, he thinks that's somehow going to diminish him, and he feels very uncomfortable about that, so he pushes it off.
This is something which the entire intelligence community has said, is concerned about. General Michael Hayden, former director of the CIA, says it's the political equivalent, the Russian meddling is the political equivalent of 9/11.
Yes. The meddling itself constituted a direct threat to American democracy, and that we are not cracking down on it as we should, and we're further at risk in future elections.
Well, I mean, what it does also is, for a president who's so obsessed with winning, it allows the Russians to win.
No. He was trying to allow Barack Obama to win, to lie, to have leverage. You're seeing the receipts here. And there you just saw the fake news trifecta, because it just wasn't Chicken Little News. It was the Washington Post, and New York Times, MSNBC, and all the major news networks in this country and around the world. The fake news trifecta. Fake news about a president not taking fake news seriously. And now finally President Trump is vindicated. Completely. Again. After being maligned by the biggest names in mainstream media for the good part of a decade, I want you to remember this. Take this one.
Biggest scandal was when they spied on my campaign. They spied on my campaign.
Well, there's no real evidence of that.
Of course there is.
No.
It's all over the place. Leslie,
Sir,
they spied on my campaign and they got caught.
Can I say something? This is 60 Minutes, and we can't put on things we can't verify.
You won't put it on because it's bad for Biden.
We can't put on things we can't verify.
Leslie, they spied on my campaign.
Well, we can't verify that.
It's been totally verified.
No.
It's been, just go down and get the papers. They spied on my campaign, they got caught.
No.
And then they went much further than that, and they got caught. And you will see that, Leslie, and you know that, but you just don't want to put it on the air.
As a matter of fact, I don't know.
Yeah. You know what was unverified? The Steele dossier. It was unverified, discredited, politicized, fictional intelligence. But it was used to secure FISA surveillance warrants on, yes, the Trump campaign. What he said right there was exactly right. What he said there was exactly right. Has 60 Minutes apologized? Yeah, apparently. $30 million worth, but maybe it's time for another lawsuit, because the $30 million was for dishonest editing of a Kamala Harris interview. Maybe it's time to revisit lawsuits against CBS. Because that right there, all of this lying, ruined lives of Trump officials like, well, Michael Flynn, for example. Despite the protests of people like the national intelligence whistleblower in 2016 who was sidelined for failing to get on board with the Russia hoax, a narrative that the whistleblower could not concur with in good conscience. Same whistleblower was floored in 2019 when asked to locate records tied to the Steele dossier because he had always been told by James Clapper in his office that the Steele dossier was unreliable. You see how this is all playing out now? Biggest scandal in American history. This scandal laid out in person by Barack Obama December 9th, 2016, and I'm not done yet. People need to go to jail, I say it again, and soon. It's been referred to the DOJ. Prosecution time. I'll be back. All right, we continue on now. The intelligence community's public face, the entirety of the Trump administration during its first term. It's all out there now. The dishonesty, the web of deceit, the attempted coup, because that's what this was. Listen to this.
What a great case officer Vladimir Putin is. He knows how to handle an asset, and that's what he's doing with the president.
Do you still believe the president could be a Russian asset?
I think it's possible.
President Putin's got a very high return on his investment.
He's taken a series of steps that had Vladimir Putin dictated them, he couldn't have mirrored more effectively.
I think what I just saw right there were 4 referrals for indictment and prosecution. So what now? Director Gabbard says she's referred this evidence to the DOJ, and the American public is ready for some accountability. The indictment of these officials need to make it out of the Twitterverse, out of social media and conservative media outlets. We need to see real consequences for these people. I'm talking about all the way up to President Obama. He clearly masterminded the entire coup. Brennan, Comey, Clapper, Rice, and all the rest there, who fell right in line for Operation Crossfire Hurricane, abdicating their oath to the Constitution for the oath to President Obama and his whims. And they dare talk about people that have faith in Donald Trump. Funny when you think about how they clamor about MAGA being too loyal to the president now, because it's nothing like the highest members of the government working to destroy it from the inside. The scandal led to 2 impeachment attempts against President Trump, the ruining of dozens of lives, heightened tensions with Russia, and the end of all trust in our intelligence communities and the media establishment, too. And don't forget the cancel culture campaigns against people like me. The consequences need to carry some real weight. Real weight. We need action. I just saw 4 referrals, and that's a nice start. Let's get to it. Time to perp walk some of these folks. They attempted a coup against the government of the United States. It's all laid out. Oh, and wait. I've got more. Something else just came in. Another smoking gun. You got to wait after the break. I'll have it for you.